What's up, Mojave Wastelanders? Welcome to our 500 subscriber special, and I know what you're thinking. Roz, I hear your wriggly little handpiece flopping on the keys. You make stories for characters in these runs. Myron's not in Fallout New Vegas, and you are correct. However, with a little change in the timeline, we can have it to where Myron doesn't pay a visit to the den nearly a year after the Enclave's defeat in Fallout 2. So not only are we tackling Old World Blues in this DLC, and I'll explain why I went with Myron for this particular idea, but this run will be introducing a different type of character challenge, changing history, more than we already do, and playing as characters in 3, New Vegas, and eventually 4 when we get around to running challenges in those games. I picked Myron to start this off with because it was very easy to make this possible, because to give him a story in New Vegas, all we have to do is slightly tweak his ending. That said, here's Myron's inventory from Fallout 2. Well, there is no Myron's outfit in this game, nor is there a needler pistol, at least I don't think there is. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. So I decided to change things up a bit, not only as a compromise, but because this is a Myron who is 40 years older, a far cry from the evil teenage companion that he is in Fallout 2, now that he's older and wiser, as one supposedly gets with age. We will be playing and making decisions with the core of Myron's character intact. Now, I don't know about you, but I simply can't see this guy turning over a new leaf when he was committing such vile acts of evil when he was not even an adult. He's so evil, in fact, that when you kill him, a minor, not only do you not gain the child killer title, but you also gain +5 to your karma if you do, though I didn't because I found him to be extremely useful in spite of his notoriety. So here's how we're going to be rolling. I'm going to be giving Myron this in place of his eponymous suit. The mad scientist scrubs were the closest thing I could think of for a white top, the kind of white top that he has in 2. And the nail gun is just plain awesome. It has a thematic similarity to the needler pistol in the regard that it's a quiet weapon. Nail gun deals bonus damage against limbs as well, which is awesome. That said, I have not used this weapon in literal years, and that will become very apparent as we start off in this run. This, however, is not the limit of what we can use as Myron. At a couple of intervals of my choosing, and you'll be aware of that when we get to them, we'll be adding just a bit more to our inventory. Oh, and what's really cool about this run is that we'll be making liberal use of the workbench. With the 50 in guns, we can craft nails. One scrap metal gives us 5 nails, so we're definitely hoarding them from Jack this time around. And I'm sure once we get to nails, we'll be stealing them from the boomers, too. I bring this up because the nail gun chews through ammo, something I've forgotten about when I started this run, so we're going to have to be careful, very much so early on. Anywhere that has scrap metal, we're going to hit it up. And as usual with these character runs, I'm going to be playing as if Myron is the main character, and as such, make decisions based off of what he would do. But again, we're playing as a mid to late 50s Myron who would have bore witness to the development and expansion of the NCR, seeing the decline of the Mordinos in Fallout 2. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but isn't the canon ending in 2 that the Mordinos kind of wane in power? And if not, we're just going to roll for that with this run because it's an AU anyway. As you saw in the thumbnail and title, and as I blurted out earlier on, in addition to the main story, we'll also be tackling our first DLC on this channel and my second favorite, Old World Blues. Dead Money is my favorite from a storytelling perspective, and it might sound weird, but I have just a little bit more fun playing Old World Blues. It's always an awesome time, and you might not think so at first, but Myron is the perfect character to roll through Old World Blues, considering the parties involved. But we'll talk more about that once we get to the Big Empty. Now, as we help the Powder Gangers with taking out Goodsprings, let's set the scene for how Boomer Myron made it to the Mojave Wasteland. While he avoided his fate at the den, call it a gut feeling that he chose to listen to, he continues working for the Mordinos for a little while. But his time with the Chosen One reinforced his belief that he's vital to the Mordinos' operation. To get Myron to join you in 2, you have an option to stroke his ego by playing upon how valuable his skill set is, and it is. Regardless of just how vile he is, it's an objective fact that he is intellectually gifted. Those words resonate within him, and shortly after his 20th birthday, Myron departs from New Reno. In the years that follow, Myron works alongside the likes of various raider gangs, and does so under a pseudonym. And that alias? Jetson. Yeah, I'm proud of that one too. As Jetson, and sticking with the tactic of keeping out of the public's eye, paralleling how his name is forgotten as time goes on in his original ending, making caps and refining his craft as the years go by, his travels bring him to the Mojave Wasteland. Now, he's been here for a good while, too, because, hey, business is good here. Myron has since become a business partner of Motor Runners, and as such, I also have a mod installed that makes the player friendly to the Fiends. It's that same one I used in the Roach Kings run, and if you're interested in it, that and any mods I have are linked in the description below. Myron is also in business with the Great Khans, along with some sinister figures in the Mojave Wasteland, such as St. James and McDermott, I think his name was. Wouldn't be hard to imagine he's made some caps from that little trading going on between those vile scavengers and the Fiends. It's this connection with the Khans, however, that actually has Myron in league with Benny. Like the Khans, Benny has promised to pay Myron. Benny kills Courier 6 while Myron disposes of the body, but instead of heading out with the Great Khans, Myron decides to just rest up for the night. Seeing a real business opportunity, which was the Powder Gangers, Myron becomes privy to the situation with said convicts. Being no stranger to working with hardened criminals, it was very easy for him to pick a side in Good Springs. Myron can navigate the Mojave Wasteland pretty well, so as far as he's concerned, nothing wrong with a bit of a delay if it means establishing an alliance that'll make his traveling even easier. And hey, perfect, we just finished up with the Powder Gangers. You know, I thought it was kind of fitting with the story we set up for Myron here that Victor actually attacks Myron. For a second there, it kind of threw me off, and then I was like, oh right, in our FNV Gary run, Victor actually killed us pretty quickly. I do like that the scrap metal that we looted from him was the difference maker for us being able to take out Doc Mitchell. And thanks to Myron assisting Joe Cobb and taking over Good Springs, he's recommended to go over to the NCRCF, where he's pretty happy to offer his services. Now, unfortunately, we cannot make use of the dynamite and explosives that Eddie will give us. However, we can make use of it by selling it and earning us just a little more cap, so we have a bit of a consistent income in this run. Every few days, Eddie will give us some dynamite since we're liked already. So first things first, Eddie wants us to go shake down a guy named Chavez and make sure that he's either out of the picture, or we can talk him down and convince him to leave. And I mean, for a Myron in his mid to late 50s, this really just feels like something as easy as taking out the garbage. Not content to waste good nails on this common vermin, and because we have the speed check to pass it, Myron tells them what's up, and Chavez is like, yeah, you know, we probably should leave here. Don't want to risk, dying. The same goes with this alleged merchant who's hanging around Gene skydiving, and Myron does the same thing there, again, not wanting to waste precious resources. And, because I want to focus a fair bit on Old World Blues this run, let's go ahead and get some main story stuff out of the way early on, because we can, that's the beauty of this game. Making his way to the 188 Trading Post, a place that good old Myron Jetson's been to many times. Turns out there's this interesting-looking scav here who... The two engage in conversation, and Veronica is kind of interested in how smart this guy is. Yeah, I'm gonna say that in his 50s, ever since Fallout 2, Myron, while he still has tendencies, he's learned to temper them with age. I have no doubt Myron still views women the way he does in Fallout 2, but he's not vocal about it. Certainly not in this case, because turns out this girl works with the Brotherhood of Steel, and I'm sure that's gonna go great. Thank you, Veronica, for taking a chance on a fifth guy in his mid to late 50s who has an uncharacteristic knowledge of the Brotherhood of Steel. And again, with Myron having seen the development expansion of the NCR and all that good stuff, he would know about the Brotherhood of Steel and what they're all about and how they and the NCR had a falling out. So he would know that it's best to take them out with gusto. Thanks to the stealth boy from Good Springs School, we're able to do that very easily. All said and done, we're going to head on over to Vault 3, a place that Myron certainly visits on the norm. And because in this run we don't use VATS mode, because Myron canonically does not have a Pip-Boy, what we can do to earn some extra caps is we can bring some Jet to Motor Runner and sell them to him. He's buying them for 20 a pop. Now you might think, well, vendors buy Jet for more, and that certainly is true. However, there's no limit to the caps that Motor Runner can give you, while for vendors, they have a limit to what they can barter with. And if we're being in character here, Myron would definitely want to be distributing his goods to his allies. And I mean, hey, it's not like he's a stranger to making Jet, because he does that for the Chosen One, along with crafting stim packs and super stim packs for them during the events of Fallout 2. Now, we're going to pivot on over to Cottonwood Cove because, well, Myron is an evil character. There's no disputing that. This is an objective fact. That said, just because he's evil doesn't mean that he would be in cahoots with the Legion. Myron is the exact type of person the Legion would throw on a cross. For him, the Legion is the absolute worst thing for business. And Myron certainly would be privy to the quote-unquote alliance between the Great Khans and Caesar's Legion. Myron doesn't engage with them at Nipton because, well, he kind of values his life. But in the instance of Cottonwood Cove here, yeah, gonna dismantle them at any opportunity. Now, near Nellis Air Force Base, Myron has someone whom he's been in contact with. He has, there's been a bit of an interesting proposition. Myron is interested in Nellis Air Force Base because, hey, customers abound there, right? So, making our way up, he meets up with his contact, Georgie Boy. But Georgie Boy flakes on the deal. Myron pumps him full of nails, gets the 427 bottle caps he's owed. You know, it's a subscriber special milestone when we actually put Georgie Boy in the story. And you know what? We're going to go the extra mile here because I want to see what happens if we take Georgie Boy along with us. Like, how far can we get before the boomers start firing upon us? And I mean, hey, Georgie Boy was the star of our independent pacifist run. If you haven't checked that out yet, you definitely should. That was a ton of fun. And no, in that run, I didn't just skip over the quest like Yesman gives you the option to. Anyway, as we're getting close to their border, and we see a missile in the sky there, you know, in the name of curiosity, we almost suffered our first death here. I mean, the missile did a lot of damage. We took that head on. Well, as far as Myron's concerned, there's no turning back now. And despite Georgie Boy almost taking us down with him, we're actually able to make this run with relative ease here. We don't take much damage going forward. Easy peasy, so we'll go and chat up with Mother Pearl, and because Myron's been allowed inside, they don't know who he is. He can start to ingratiate himself with the good people of Nellis. Now, while we help out the doctor, just gotta say, at the start, I did beeline straight to Novak, to Old Lady Gibson, because she sells a ton of scrap metal. Her inventory refreshes every couple of days, so we're gonna be stopping by her constantly. And as a man of science through his pharmaceutical developments, Myron's next task is to repair the broken solar array panel, something he finds relatively easy. But there's nothing like a good old magazine to read on the fly to give you some pointers and refresh the old noggin. He is getting older, don't forget. And last but not least, we're gonna go ahead and test out Loyal's little sonic emitter. I like to imagine that Loyal kind of likes Myron's intellect. Again, Loyal doesn't know who Myron is or his past, so it's kind of funny to think about that in hindsight. Having assisted the boomers in pretty much every way he can, and listening to the young man talk about the history of the boomers through the little tour of the mural, all Myron has left to do now is to go raise the B-29 bomber. It's a miracle that thing hasn't turned into a pile of rust, considering how old it is. Maybe the Lake Lurks have been maintaining it. Maybe that's their personal property. Oh, just because they're fish people, they don't have the rights to it. I wouldn't put it past the boomers of Nellis to engage in such bigotry. And with a new line of customers ready for him, Myron can then continue on and go ahead and meet up with the Great Khans. Meeting up with the good lieutenant here, he tells Myron that there's a situation with the Great Khans and quote-unquote Jetson, as the good lieutenant doesn't know who this is, decides to let him in because Jetty Boy here says that he can possibly negotiate a deal, not knowing that Boomer Myron here is actually working with the Great Khans. But again, he has no interest in provoking the ire of the NCR. Certainly not when Myron and the Khans would have their backs to the wall like this. Jessup tells Myron that Benny has betrayed them and hasn't paid them, and of course that extends to Myron as well. So it's time for a little bit of payback. But first, now, Jetson is no stranger to Freeside. Certainly this guy would be somewhat known around the neighborhood. I can see him doing business with the Garrett twins. I also see him being fascinated by the scientific marvels that come with the followers of the apocalypse, their knowledge with medicine, all that good stuff. And of course, seeing Dixon make his own jet just makes Myron think of simpler times. Now, we did say that Myron doesn't have any interest in earning the ire of the NCR. Well, that was when there was a little group of soldiers, fully armed and ready with their trigger fingers. Here, there's a real opportunity to sow the seeds of dissent and get them out of Freeside. Unlike the fully armed NCR troopers, these guys are super light in their armaments, and with the nail gun, we're able to tear them apart in seconds. Quite the stark contrast in my performance back in Good Springs, wouldn't you say? Having successfully aided the Kings in the way that the enemy is my friend, Myron does know also that there's a nice familiar old name here in Freeside, and hey, might as well go do some work for them. Myron doing work for the Vangraffs, isn't that just a nice full circle feel? Now, Gloria would know who Jetson is, but not that Jetson is Myron. So the absolute lack of a background check actually makes sense this run. Now, I have to wear the Vangraff combat armor for this quest, but thankfully I am still able to use our nail gun. And I think that's okay, because this is for the purposes of clearing a quest, and we didn't switch our weapon even though we have something much better to use. If I am forced to use something specifically for a quest, like with Loyal's Detonator, for instance, I am allowed to use that because, otherwise I can't complete the quest. I'm not sure why Simon let us keep our nail gun, but it's good that we had this trusty little bad boy. Next up for the Van Graffs, we have to go meet up with a contact, a guy who disconcertingly refers to himself as Strange Man. All we gotta do is let him know that the Van Graffs deal is going through, and then we can go. Now, John Baptiste wants us to do something pretty interesting, and oh boy, this is gonna take Myron down memory lane. And now, despite that little hiccup in Freeside, Myron is still able to do some work for the Crimson Caravan, and has been doing so. And so it turns out that, a familiar name, Cassidy, comes up. He finds out that she's in the Mojave outpost because she's being held up there because of all the fine red tape, all that good bureaucratic stuff. So now's as good a time as any for Myron to negotiate the deal the Crimson Caravan has for Cassidy caravans. Now, teenage Myron would totally screw this up by being a creeper, but between being older and wiser, and the fact that Cassidy didn't like Myron, which, not many people did, this gives him an opportunity to get back at old John Cassidy, even though John Cassidy is long and truly gone. Basically what I'm doing is I'm playing off of John Cassidy's disdain for Myron, and kind of working that into the story here, like Myron's aware of it, and he's like, oh wow, I remember that guy from so many years ago. His daughter seems like a chip off the old block. But he's able to successfully lure Cass out because he allegedly has information on what happened to the Cassidy caravans, and this adds up because Alice McClafferty's deal to buy out the Cassidy caravans kind of makes sense. But unfortunately for her, well, Rose of Sharon Cassidy doesn't realize that the game was rigged from the start. Now, Cass won't join an evil karma career, and she will leave if you don't change your karma, but because we hadn't actually recruited her yet, we were able to get her to come here. All said and done, there's just one more thing to do for the Van Graffs, and turns out that the Van Graffs' mysterious buyer is Caesar's Legion. Myron is initially a bit miffed at this because, why would they want to sell to the Legion? They should know better, certainly. But to his surprise and great amusement, Gloria Van Graff pulls a fast one on the Legion here. Now, we could just stand back and let the NCR and the Van Graffs take out the Legion, but not much fun in that. And because of a little bit of friendly fire, we have an NCR guy firing at us. We're able to have that go away once we get back to Gloria and we finish up the quest. I like to think that the NCR trooper who was attacking Myron has it out for him because he heard about what happened over at the little refugee spot in Freeside. All said and done with the Van Graffs here and cementing more of a reputation for himself in Freeside, it's time for Myron to swing back out into the wastes and come full circle with a deal he had made with Eddie. You see, after doing the first couple of quests for Eddie, there's a quest called I Fought the Law, and we can either help the NCR take the prison, or we can help Eddie hold off the NCR, and I think we know what Myron's going to do. Being backed by a force of angry convicts who don't want to go back to prison and would rather die fighting, I think Myron's going to be a lot more confident here. Now, we've got quite a few NCR troopers to take out here, and we do have to be careful. The service rifle isn't the strongest weapon, but the mad scientist scrubs aren't exactly defensive, And as I've been getting reacquainted with the nail gun, shooting them in the head, like they do in Night of the Living Dead, turns out to be the best call. Just a reminder that the nail gun does bonus damage to limbs, so it's also good to shoot them in the legs or the arms. And we have a ton of nails going into this because that awesome Great Khan armor, oh my god, she sells so many of those. And all for 1 bottle cap each. I'll be sure to include a pit stop of that later in the run because you gotta see it to believe it, just how many nails she sells. Man, we went from running out of nails, almost. Actually, pretty much, we had 2 nails before Victor died over in Good Springs. We got the scrap metal and took out Doc Mitchell. To helping the Powder Gangers just wipe out the NCR from the NCRCF. Really coming full circle with our gameplay here, aren't we? With business largely taken care of outside of the Mojave, it's time to head over to Vegas and make Benny answer for his betrayal. Getting stopped by the Securitron gatekeeper here, Myron uses his power of science to just bypass this whole check. That high science score sure is going to come in handy once we get to the Big Empty. As he makes his way inside, he is very surprised to see Victor alive and well, considering what happened at Good Springs. Victor issues him a warning, and for the time being, Myron helps out the Garrett twins with one last little errand, and that's taking out this guy who skipped out with their bottle caps. And that's resolved very easily as Myron helps out Caleb McCaffrey with his Pinhead audition. Now, before we return to Miss Garrett and tell her that the deed was done, we're going to pay a quick little visit to the tops here. Myron's able to convince Swank that Benny's up to no good regarding Mr. House. With sufficient evidence and the general ability to convince Swank that something's up, Myron gets his gear back, heads on up to Benny's private suite, where he's certainly not expecting what's about to happen here. Benny does see Myron enter and wants to discuss payment, quote-unquote, but since Myron, again, being much older and more used to how things go, yeah, double-crossing him's a bad idea. And here's where we get the first of our upgrades, with Benny taken care of, and as a sign of Myron's rise to power in New Vegas, the start of it anyway, we're allowed to use Benny's suit if we want to, as well as Maria, and a good thing too, because check this out with Clandon. You might think that Myron would help Nero and Big Sal, and I would normally agree with that, but being privy to the whole alliance with Caesar's Legion thing, that's gonna have Myron helping out Caccino, which I don't see him minding that either, because it's not like Caccino does anything that Myron would disapprove of. Now, because they only had the 9mm bullet, because I came here straight from the tops, well, you know how we can get Nero to just attack us by stealing the pool balls on the pool table. I mean, hey, I get it too. If someone stole my billiard property, I'd get sent into a berserker rage too. Thankfully, the Omerta thugs register Nero and Big Sal as enemies, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. It's a shame there's no way to convince Nero to not go through with the Caesar's Legion route because, well, you'd think that a family of betrayers would see that coming. And while we're here, we'll go ahead and settle business here with the White Glove Society. Now, Myron is a person who cares about Myron only, so he's not going to really care who his business partners are, so long as they're not endangering him. And considering Myron's more evil, depraved nature, I can fully see him siding with Mortimer. Now, Myron himself might not be a cannibal, but I don't see him having any real issues working with one. Certainly not a Myron who's had 40 years to grow as a person. Considering that Myron worked with the Mordinos for quite a while, he's probably seen stranger stuff than this, to be honest. Now, this route's pretty simple. All we have to do is take out Ted Gunderson, or we can go after Mortimer's original target. Now, Myron, again, having seen what the NCR has become, is going to be pretty happy to stick it to a Brahmin Baron. I don't think he'd much like those kind of people. I can't say I'd blame him for that one. Myron gets the okay from Mortimer to go to the basement and deal with things as he sees fit. And it just so happens that one Walter Phoebus wants Myron to take out both Het Gunderson and his son Ted. So that's just two birds with one stone right there. Ted tries to run, but, well, doesn't make it very far. We'll go ahead and stick him back in the freezer. Don't want the meat going bad, right? And, well, I forgot to loot Ted Gunderson because I forgot that the Ted Gunderson's blood quest item's on him, so, well, we're gonna watch that play out here in a minute. We do have to deal with the two guards that Gunderson hired, and, well, we do have some hollow points. I did stock up a little bit before coming back to the Ultralux. Myron decides to check the place out for a sec, and, well, it is a very nice suite, gotta say. But the Gunderson hired hand gets a little close, but that's nothing we can't take care of with our hollow point rounds. Now, you could say that it's out of character that Myron would forget this detail, and you would be correct. Nah, this is just me forgetting, and I wanted to keep it in because I thought it was funny. It's not that big of a deal, though. All we have to do is head back to the basement. Ted's body will still be there. We just gotta loot him, come back here, smear the blood, all that good stuff, and then we can continue on with the next part of the Beyond the Beef quest. Just one sec here. Ah, there we go. Perfectly preserved blood taken from a bloodied corpse. Gotta love it. So, for the next phase of the plan, we have to go alert a Securitron to some wrongdoings here in the Ultralux. Now, why we can't tell a Securitron to go appropriate Yes Man and bring him to Mr. House is kind of beyond me, since you'd think that would qualify. Not that we do it in this run, I just thought that was kind of funny. And unfortunately for old Heck here, he's learning the hard way that his status isn't going to get him out of this little predicament. I mean, how dare he murder his son? He should be feeling things like guilt and shame. And, well, he ends up feeling riddled with holes and in immense pain. And as our good Securitron says, be sure to watch out because Het Gunderson's body is a potential tripping hazard. So we'll head on over to our man Mortimer, tell him that the deed is done, and I do believe that Mortimer would be loyal in this alliance because he does owe, in like a casual playthrough, he does owe the courier big for going this route. Same would be true for Myron, of course. Now, we do have to wait after tonight's banquet at 7 o'clock, and yeah, we are on hardcore mode, but we have plenty of food, plenty of water to keep us sustained. We'll go ahead, complete our quest, and that's one more off the Yes Man checklist. And I don't think that's really much of a spoiler because I don't see Myron working with Mr. House, nor do I see House wanting to work with someone like Myron, or Jetson as he calls himself, someone who would be very bad for business from House's standpoint. Well, Myron's a businessman too, just not the kind that Mr. House is. Using the platinum chip to bypass the terminal security check, he makes a beeline for House's little cryogenic chamber. And he's our 1/10th milestone for I Dismember You. Well, that's something worth celebrating. Okay, so now that we've been formally given a second chance by both the NCR and the Legion, before we head on over to Fortification Hill to upgrade the Securitrons, gonna do one more thing really quick here, and we're gonna get Melissa's little Great Khan encampment on our fast travel. I haven't started Oh My Papa yet. Oh, it's gonna change here in a sec. But I figure it's good to get this early, that way once we do start Oh My Papa, we can just fast travel straight back to her. And the only thing we'll have to do from there is grab the Legion Slave Ledger right from Caesar's tent. Something you'd think that he would be taking a real great interest in keeping an eye on, but apparently not. Now, the route to Melissa's Great Khan encampment is absolutely infested with Deathclaws, but we do have a couple Stealth Boys in our inventory, so we can go ahead and make use of one of those bad boys and make our way to her. Now, that's not a guarantee because the Deathclaws have excellent senses. We found ourselves in quite the pickle in the Independent Pacifist run when we came here to do this part of the game. Fortunately for us, however, we are able to elude detection from those fearsome little bastards. And again, because we haven't started the quest yet, we don't have the option to convince her to go against Caesar's Legion Alliance, and that's okay because we can still do her character quest here, which we'll do when we come back. And, well, it's time to go to Fortification Hill. Now, we did Boone's quest in Novak, nothing else with him. But you know what? Myron remembers how much this guy hates the Legion, and going into Fortification Hill alone is a death sentence. Remember, keep in mind that we're not playing as our OP courier here, we're playing as a 50s Myron who's not the best in combat. And well, Boone going to Fortification Hill, that sounds like a good idea. After taking out Cursu Lucullus here, Boone tells Myron, or Jetson, that, well, this is the last boat we're ever gonna take probably, and Myron's like, okay. Last for him, maybe. And things start off pretty well here in the entrance of Fortification Hill. There's just a couple of recruit legionaries, and we already killed Lucullus, so there's just the recruits and the guard, but very easy to take out. All you gotta do is aim for their limbs with the nail gun. They'll go down real fast. Now, one advantage we do have here is that the nail gun excels at lightly armored targets, and, well, anything that's not a Kenturian has light armor in the Legion, so we're gonna be okay there at least. With Boone at our side getting some sweet vengeance, things are looking up. Now, I can't help but appreciate the irony here. I call these two Team Jason Marsden, as he voices both Myron and Boone, and Max from Goof Troop, just thought I'd throw that out there. However, entering the gate here and going deeper into the camp, things are pretty dangerous here. Both members of Team Marsden are lightly armored, and well, Boone goes down, and Myron does his best to mount an offense, taking out another legionary or two with a nail gun. Well, then the Vexillarius comes out and just makes mincemeat out of us with his 12.7mm submachine gun. That thing chews through us like paper. And as we make our second attempt here, we're going to be making use of cover via the tents, an absolute lifesaver, because as you just saw, trying to fight them and out in the open like that, yeah, we're not going to stand much of a chance. However, if we can funnel them in one or two at a time, go for the head or the legs, we make very short work of them. And unfortunately for Boone, he drops again. That's fine, we just needed him to soak hits anyway. It's a shame too, because his spotter perk would have come in real handy for us. I do find it pretty amusing that Praetorian guards, who are supposed to be the best of the best, so much so that they have 25% increased movement speed, just can't seem to catch up to this guy who's in his 50s and well past his prime. I don't imagine that Myron's in the best shape, but with his mind as sharp as ever, he'll find a way. Boy, this puts us in an awkward predicament, doesn't it? I mean, on one hand, it's Myron versus the Legion. I mean, who would you vote for? I don't know. I mean, because I'm playing the run, I'm gonna say I hope that we can clear out the Legion, but from a moral standpoint, it's like... But yeah, having to pick between these two bad apples, who would you side with? Seems like we've earned the ire of Antony, that guy who breeds dogs here in the Legion. Doesn't really seem to be anything special about him. He's going down just as quickly as the rest of these legionaries. Again, using the terrain to our advantage here. And this part of the camp is pretty clean, so we're gonna go ahead and cut to when we pull the next group of legionaries. And this part coming up here is pretty funny. We funnel in the veteran legionaries, just like we've been doing to the rest of, the Legion here. And we're doing a pretty great job against this pair of veterans here. Go for the head, cripple it as soon as possible so we can deal even more damage. And as I'm falling back, my plan is to jump over this little space here. Turns out that I got stuck, and what I can only guess is just the worst collision, the worst instance of it at the worst possible time. So we'll try again. We just won't pull them that way. While we take out more legionaries here at Fortification Hill. A lot of new faces here in lieu of our 500 subscriber milestone, but hi, I'm Razador, I've been Lothian Odyssey. Been a fan of Fallout for many years. I started with Fallout 3, still love the game. It's not my favorite one in this series, but it's always fun for me to play, which is why I make videos on it. I didn't play the isometric ones until much later, and I had an absolute blast with all of them. 1, Tactics, and 2. Love all 3 of them. I do plan on making some content for those games a little bit down the road. If you can't tell by this video, I love coming up with stories for these character challenges. Makes them more fun for me to make. I've been into creative writing since I was in 6th grade, and ever since then, just kept at it. And a few personal deets about me is that I live in the Gulf Coast, I love the seafood down here, and though I was technically born in Elizabeth, New Jersey, the town I grew up in, which is not in New Jersey, I checked the 2024 consensus, and the town I grew up in 2024 has 605 people. I love to travel, I love to write, I love gaming, obviously. And when it comes to stuff like writing, I feel like characters like Myron, although they are despicable people, they have their place, especially in a game like Fallout 2, where I feel like Myron is a character who is a product of his upbringing. I mean, you gotta consider who he works for, how young he is, all that. Doesn't excuse any of what he does by any means. But the fact that we're able to not only bear witness to someone like him, but to have him on our team, it adds to the setting and the story. And if we're role-playing as who we want to role-play as, if we wanted to, could play our chosen one in a way that's not too dissimilar from Myron. Now, at the start of the run, I did say that I chose Myron to start off this new little, subsect, I guess, of the character challenges that we do here on this channel. Because it was the easiest to tweak, because all I had to do is just change it to where Myron doesn't go to the den, and just does other stuff. Opening up the possibility of playing as characters from older titles and sticking them in like 3, New Vegas, or 4 when we get to it. It does seem like it'll be fun, although I think it's going to be a lot more challenging to come up with some of them because, again, Myron is 16, 17, and 2, so change is ending. He's in his 50s here in the Mojave Wasteland in Fallout New Vegas. On that note, I actually know which character we're going to be running similar to Myron here. The character itself is not similar to Myron in any way, but the possibility for a fun story and a fun challenge is there. Oh, and pivoting for a second here. Now, we could just leave. We could just, not go through with helping the Great Khans break away from the Legion, because we've already wiped out the rest of Fortification Hill. But where's the fun in that? Yes, the senior member of Team Marston is going to be taking on Caesar and his room full of Praetorians. And, well, unlike in the Tale of Two Wastelands challenge, where Caesar just comes out by himself, which I'm sure is a bug or something. It was hilarious, though. Now Caesar comes out with all of his Praetorians, including Lucius. And, well, I know the perfect place where we can do some Ring Around the Rosie style kiting. But anyway, back to my original point here. Characters like Myron, and we even see that in New Vegas here through St. James, McDermott, Motor Rudder, and the Fiends when we learn about them and what's going on through Aerotech. They're all great pieces to tell the story of what goes on in their respective areas. And just them being there doing the stuff they do tells us a lot without a single drop of exposition being spoken. Now, me personally, I'm able to disassociate myself from characters I play as. Like, when I play Fallout New Vegas, I want to play as a Legion courier. Like, I did a Let's Play on this channel, too, under a similar premise. When playing casually, I want to experience a story, and if I'm doing something like this character challenge, I want to tell a story. And that's not to say that my way is necessarily the correct one. Some people like to play with putting themselves into who they're playing as, and that's totally cool, man. You play the game the way you want to. That's what makes games like New Vegas awesome, is because everyone has their own different ways of playing. Everyone has their own different ways of experiencing the story in a way that they enjoy. Speaking of stories, it's time for us to hit up the Big Empty. Now, I mentioned earlier on that I thought Myron was the perfect character to play through Old World Blues, with all parties being taken into consideration here. Well, now that we're here, we can start to talk about that a little bit. However, before that, as we make our way to the Big Empty and find out that, well, stuff's not fully right here. Something's a little off. Probably, probably the breeze coming up our backside thanks to the lobotomite gown we're wearing. And that little tingly sensation from those surgical scars around our head, chest, and back. As we investigate our surroundings, we end up in the sink, which is my personal single favorite space in the entire game, and my favorite player housing. We're gonna get more to that a little bit later. As Myron's investigating his surroundings and goes to a place called the Think Tank. Well, that sounds interesting, so let's go check it out. I imagine his reaction is the same as pretty much any of our reactions when we first saw this place. 5 giant floating TVs with a little brain in the jars, and let me introduce you to the scientists of the think tank. Dr. Klein, Dr. Boris, Dr. Dalla, Dr. Zero, and Dr. Static. And as we're learning who these guys are, they seem to be a little out of their minds here. And it turns out that they performed surgery on us, removing our brain amongst other things such as our heart and our spine. Their colleague, Dr. Mobius, has made off with our brain because of some tussle they got into. I'd like to see that, like, Dr. Mobius and Dr. Klein. I like to think that Dr. Mobius was blaring the preview channel, while Dr. Klein was like, nah man, Team TV Guide. Now, these guys might seem like total goofballs, and they are. However, the think tank is a collective of extremely dangerous individuals, and we're gonna find out why as we explore the mysteries of the Big Empty. Oh, and we get some pretty sweet perks for being heartless and spineless. Not phrasing I would take out of context. So basically, Dr. Klein wants us to go after Dr. Mobius, and he promises to insert our brain back into our bodies, and, well, Myron doesn't really buy this, but he goes with it anyway because, hey, if he can get his brain back, well, that's a start at least. And as we make our way outside, one of the first things we encounter out here in the Big Empty is this strange humanoid creature called a lobotomite. Now, Dr. Klein and the other think tank scientists call us lobotomite as well, because we don't have a brain. But unlike us, these guys did not maintain any control of their faculties, and they were experimented on by the dozens. Something that surely wouldn't bother Myron, considering the cost it took for him to perfect his version of Jet. And one thing we're going to do here is we're going to update our little hub called the Sink here, which, I mean, again, it's my favorite player housing in the game, so we're going to be doing quite a bit of that. Not going to show all of it, otherwise this video would be like 3 hours long. But just know that Dr. Klein needs us to hunt down a couple of items here. The X2 antenna, the sonic emitter, we're going to need that too. And something called the Stealth Suit Mark II, which we need to bypass the Forbidden Dome. Allegedly. You actually don't, but hey, I mean, Dr. Klein thinks so, and he's a man of science, so he knows better. And being here in the Old World Blues and the Big Empty is where we get our next upgrade. We're allowed to use the sonic emitter, obviously because we need to do it to clear out areas such as the testing grounds. But because Myron does technically have proficiency in energy weapons in Fallout 2, again, here's his tag skills in the game. I think a weapon like the sonic emitter is right up his alley. Next up, we're going to go to Higgs Village and grab the module for the jukebox, my favorite part of the sink, but we'll get into that later. We'll go ahead and grab that X2 antenna, and yes, the Marjorie optional update. I don't know why that's there. That same glitch occurred when I was playing in Tale of Two Wastelands, the Caesar's Legion Let's Play. I don't know why that won't go away, because we've already cleared Beyond the Beef, but whatever. It was just something I gotta deal with for the rest of the run. And I decide to sneak my way up the little ramp here, not noticing the staircase leading up to the X2 antenna. You know, I've never actually seen that little staircase before. I legit always crawl up here to get the X2 antenna. Next up, we're going to undergo a training simulation set up by Dr. Boris, and I always thought this was kind of sad, honestly. Like, despite his boisterous rambling, high school was obviously a very traumatic experience for this guy. It doesn't excuse any of what he says or does, but when you go through this place, his trauma's on full display here, and he does not go about it in a healthy, constructive way. Doesn't go about coping with it in a healthy way. Very destructive. That's putting it mildly. Considering that Dr. Boris is the one responsible for creating Night Stalkers and Cazadors, all to get back at Richie Marcus. Now, in addition to Boris's insane pre-recorded ramblings, this place is ripe with dangers in the form of the cyberdogs, another creation of the good doctor. Now, the cyberdogs can do a lot of damage, especially up close, considering that mad scientist scrubs aren't exactly protective armor. And they do have a chance to knock us down. I might chalk that up to our low endurance, or maybe they just passively have it. But it's much easier to shoot these guys in the head than it is humanoids, so same strategy applies. Just aim for the heads, it deals more damage, more than usual, and you should be alright. And as we're going through these testing facilities, we receive yet another upgrade in the form of our K9 Cyberdog minigun. We do have one more upgrade that we'll be getting here in a little bit. Now, here in Gabe's little feeding pit, we have to take him out, and then we have to obtain a sonic emitter sample, and report back to the Big Empty. Thanks to being under the effects of a stealth boy, that's a rather simple endeavor. Now, this took me a hot minute, but you have to go through Gabe's little digging spots to pull up the sonic emitter. It's called Gabriel's Bark. You can tell it took me a while because I'm using cat's eye to find out where I'm going. Now, while we are under the effects of our stealth boy still, we're gonna have a little bit of fun with the robo-scorpions that Dr. Mobius sends after us. Our sneak skill isn't too bad, and I think by this point I had Silent running either that or we're about to get it, I forget. But being under the effects of the Stealth Boy makes this a rather simple task here, and thanks to the Robot's Expert perk, which I fully believe Myron would have, we're able to disable the Robo-Scorpions, and not only do we get a little bit of XP for it, but we can destroy the Robo-Scorpions and get even more XP and scrap metal. Yep, I'm still using the workbenches. And the real beauty of this strategy is that with the machines disabled and with us sneaking, every attack that we pull off is a sneak attack critical hit. Gotta love it. So we're gonna head back to the sink and not report to Dr. Klein just yet. We want to install some of the modules, and I did say that Jukebox is my personal favorite, and I'm about to show you why. Take it away, Jukebox.
Ooh, yeah, dig that sweet music. Damn, it's good to be back online. Used to, long time ago. Then old Doc Mo ripped out my music drives and stuck in more acoustical processors. Guess you could say I got the blues, even if I can't play them no more. Dig, I'm an acoustical wizard kid. Old Doc Mo used me to prototype his sonic weapon designs. Get me a good sample base to work from, and I can whip up a wave that makes Jericho look like a kazoo. Got yourself a sonic emitter, don't you? Thought so. Bring that old thing on in here and bring me some sound samples and I'll make that baby sing. Or scream, if that's what you want. Right on, Daddy. Let's spin some grooves.
Also, by having him upgrade your sonic emitter or changing which module, you can bypass the need to ever get it repaired because he effectively gives you a new one. Now, we do have to find the Stealth Sooth Mark II, and I'm going to say right here, this is not one of our upgrades because, I mean, it's not really Myron-themed gear, but we do need it to clear out this quest. At least I think we do. I mean, it still counts as a quest item because Dr. Klein needs it. Just know that I'm only using it for the purposes of clearing out this quest. We're not engaging in combat. Like, we'll disable a couple of robots, but beyond that, nah, we just gotta go find the safe, pull out our reward, all that good stuff. Now, touching upon an earlier point, I did say that I thought Myron would be the ideal character for Old World Blues. Well, considering that the think tank is the primary party involved here, them and Dr. Mobius, and the kind of stuff that the think tank does, I think Myron would kinda like these guys, honestly. I can see teenage Myron being on board with the think tank, so our boomer Myron most definitely would be. I can see him, quote-unquote, appreciating the value of what they put into their research. That, of course, being a nod to his sentiments regarding the slaves that got high off of Brahmin dung. in Fallout 2 while he was working on Jet. I would see him viewing the Lobotomites in a similar regard. Oh, and being responsible for Cazadors and Night Stalkers? Well, that's pretty interesting, actually. Though I do think that Myron would find Boris's little, projection fantasy in that test facility kind of funny and probably a little pathetic. Oh, and just showing this part here with upgrading the last of the sink and turning on our nice fancy red lights just to show that here in a sec you'll see quest completed influencing people. We have fully upgraded the sink again. It's a ton of fun, but if I included every bit of it, well, again, this would be a very, very long video. But don't worry, this is not the last time we'll be visiting Old World Blues here on this channel. So, before our big showdown with Dr. Mobius, there's a giant robo-scorpion, something that is surely going to be difficult. Well, through use of a stealth boy, let me show you this little trick. Now, the giant robo-scorpion is powerful, and the way that this arena is designed is for us to take advantage of the turrets. We can hack them, or we can stealth our way up to the giant robo-scorpion and disable it, and then we can destroy it with our Gabriel's Bark-infused sonic emitter. Oh, and last note on our little Old World Blues upgrades is that I decided to go through with this because it's our first time in Old World Blues, and because it's a 500 subscriber milestone, we could be a bit more generous with what we give Myron. And much like the nail gun, I haven't used these weapons in a very long time. And now, before confronting Dr. Mobius, don't forget to pick up your audio sample of the giant robo-scorpion. That's for your sonic emitter. Now, I like to think that Myron has an idea of what to expect for Dr. Mobius. Like, he probably thinks that he's not too unlike Dr. Klein. But, well, when he meets Dr. Mobius, it turns out that's true. And also that there's been one heck of a misunderstanding here. So it turns out that Dr. Mobius, the threats he was broadcasting when we got here to the Big Empty, and he plays it throughout, well, he was taking Psycho when that happened. He's not typically a violent person, but when he is, oh, watch out, he gets violent. And we can offer to patch up Dr. Mobius a bit here. And again, Myron liking the think tank and quickly understanding what's going on between them and Dr. Mobius. He's like, yeah, you know what? What's one more scientist on the field gonna hurt? Also, this guy has our brain, so gotta figure out where that is and what condition it's in. And the best part from all of this is once we finish up our business with Dr. Mobius and we're gonna go chat with our brain, we are gonna hit level 24. Very awesome. And it's kind of a shame that this is a one-off because, like, this is the highest level we've been. We got pretty high leveled as 3-Dog, but I don't think we got this high. I actually don't remember. It's been a while since I've done that run. And I figure for our perk, we already took better criticals, so let's take Finesse and really bump up our critical hit chance and damage. And as we check out Dr. Mobius's little laboratory here, we find ourselves a nice little trunk, and, well, that contains our last upgrade here for this challenge, Dr. Mobius's Scrubs. That is a variation of the Mad Scientist Scrubs, and as per my normal rules, we're allowed to use it. And I think that's a good send-off while we're about to finish up business here in the Big Empty. We also have Dr. Mobius's glasses. No, I didn't take the 4-eye trait, so we're not getting much of a benefit from beyond the small buffs they provide for us. Speaking of traits, you might notice that we haven't actually gotten addicted throughout the course of this run. That's because for our traits, I chose Skilled because Skilled is just great. And Logan's Loophole, I'm chalking that up to Myron having a little breakthrough with his little research over the decades. Turns out that worked out pretty well, all things considered, here in Old World Blues. You know, being heartless, spineless, brainless, talking to our brain. So basically, we have to convince our brain to come back and join our body. And while we have to choose our words wisely, not only can we convince our brain that, hey, the think tank scientists have gone a little ham, we also have skill checks to convince our good self to reunite with our body. I went with the energy weapon skill check because it didn't make any sense, because our brain wasn't part of our body when we were using energy weapons in this run, although maybe the brain remembers from the days of Fallout 2 when Myron was given an energy weapon or something. What would you say to your brain if you had a chance to talk to it and it could communicate with you? Ah yes, our showdown with the good Dr. Klein and the think tank. Now, we can solve this in a number of ways here. And touching upon what I said earlier, rather than killing off the think tank scientist, Myron kinda likes these guys, and you can do quests for the other members of the think tank, and Doing so will have them side with you, which can cause you to convince Dr. Klein to become partners rather than him and the other think tank scientists calling you lobotomite. Another thing in the 40 years it's been since the events of Fallout 2 is that Myron's interest in science was pharmaceutical back in the day, and would have since expanded because more scientific knowledge means that his product becomes better, that he makes better products, not just jet or whatever. Stim packs, super stim packs, all that good stuff. But a mind like Myron's would certainly be drawn to what goes on here in the Big Empty. And unlike Dr. Klein, Dr. Mobius, and the other think tank scientists who kinda show that off in a goofy way, which is a stark contrast to the straight-up diabolical, evil experiments they pull. Again, Dr. Boris creating Cazadors and Night Stalkers because he wanted to torment Richie Marcus. Myron doesn't come with any of that humor. He really would be the face of the think tank here, but again, without any of their loud, eccentric behavior. Bringing Dr. Mobius and the think tank back together, they are now partnered with Myron, although he pretty much is the superior here. I think that's just unspoken. So the think tank will continue to operate pretty much uninterrupted, while Myron heads back to the Mojave Wasteland to finish up business. And I did say I would show the Great Khan Armor, the most awesome lady in the entire game, because, man, she sells you... Not only does she sell you a lot of stuff, but with that Great Khan rep, the prices are reasonable. So let's go ahead and wrap up before Hoover Dam. We're going to go ahead and help out President Kimball, because with Myron at the head of New Vegas, he's going to put on a bit of a face here. Show that that second chance really was worth it. And then, with President Kimball heading back out west, we head on over to El Dorado Substation and level up once again. Very nice. And you see it right in front of you. Our speech is still 50. We have no intention of talking down Leg Atlanteus. And again, just a reminder that with some of the decision-making we've been doing here in this run, I've been doing so under the context of it being an older Myron, so I've had to take some liberties with his decision-making because teenage Myron might not have made some of these choices, but as an adult, well on his way to his 60s, there's a bit of wiggle room, I like to think. So we'll head on back to Yes Man, and regarding the decisions we made regarding the lesser tribes he told us that we should interact with, funny enough, Yes Man is pretty much okay with everything that Myron has done here. Just goes to show that Yes Man will listen to the player whether they are good or evil. Now, as we make our way to Hoover Dam, being accompanied by a Securitron, that Securitron is also why I don't ban companions, because we'll have allied units helping us out anyway. So making use of characters like Boone or Veronica, kinda whatever, especially in character-based runs where I feel like it's an in-character decision, rather than sending off the Great Khans to Wyoming, but also not wanting them to side with the Legion. You know, you saw earlier in the run, Myron convinced Papa Khan to just have one last bout of glory. If there was an option to expand Great Khan influence, I would have done that, but that seemed like the best thing that he could have done, because the Khan's going to Wyoming. That's not going to do Myron's business much good. As we deal with the Kenturians here, gotta make sure that we aim for the head. These guys got some pretty solid armor, with their heads being unprotected. Not sure why, because they do have helmets to go with it, but I certainly don't mind that. Dealing with the next pair and the Prime Legionary, I'm trying to fall back a bit because I'm like, where's my Securitron at? Because I'm trying to fall back to have the NCR Rangers and the Securitron deal with them. But, I mean, the NCR Ranger probably is sniping them, but the Securitron is nowhere to be found. Maybe it got destroyed and I wasn't paying attention. And now that we are pretty much one-on-one with this Kenturian, it's just a matter of keeping our finger on the trigger, not letting up off that gas, and down he goes. Now, as we make our way inside, again, we don't have a speech check beyond 50, but we do have a Meeting People's Magazine, and Benny's suit is still on us. Combining those together, we'll have 75 in our speech, which will allow us to bypass the encounter with the two heavy troopers. Again, I don't know how Myron knows Colonel Moore's name. I mean, actually, I can kind of see him keeping tabs on it. Maybe he would know who that is, but we haven't met her in this run. It's just kind of funny that that's an option for us. Thankfully, we have the bare minimum to pass this. Now, these two NCR troopers wouldn't be difficult to defeat, but I felt like making use of Benny's gear, which we were allowed to use once we defeated him. We'll go ahead and make our way on over to the terminal there, talk to Yes Man, tell him that we are going to be powering up the fort because we want our awesome Securitron army, much to his great delight. So we push a switch, make our way back to the top, and, well, turns out the Boomers of Nellis came in super clutch for us. Now, check this out. Because they bombed this area, the Centurions all have 1 health, and just they line up like lambs to the slaughter. That's the cleanest encounter with those guys we've had up to this point. That was awesome. Now, as we make our way to Legatlantius, what would a New Vegas run by Myron be like? Well, considering his history with the Mordinos and his upbringing in New Reno, and if you played Honest Hearts and you talked to Stella and learn about her experiences in New Reno, it's not too hard to imagine that Myron would be turning New Vegas pretty much into New Reno, but in his vision. I don't see Myron caring too much about the outside settlements, although, considering what he knows about the NCR, it is at least worth keeping them fortified in somebody like Novak or the Powder Gangers at the NCRCF and Vault 19, keeping them good to go. And of course, Motor Runner and the Fiends, Myron's greatest asset. Now that I'm thinking about it, this kind of doubled as a Fiend run, but if they had an outsider, like Myron, working with them. Well, I did want to do an evil playthrough for our 500 subscriber special, and I think I've hit all the marks for it. And yeah, as you're seeing on screen now, the Praetorians here in the Legates camp, I mean, we cleaned out Fortification Hill, most of it by ourselves. I mean, yeah, Boone was a nice little bullet sponge, but when it came to the Praetorians, we killed all of them on our own. So this is basically just Tuesday for us. However, we can't get too sure of ourselves because the Praetorians still can deal a lot of damage with the Ballistic Fists. Case in point here, the pair that we're engaged with. We take out one of them without too much of a fuss, but the second one, I mess up on my movement a bit here. Only takes a couple of punches, and our health is already down to just below half, so gotta be very careful. So what we're gonna do is bring him out towards the entrance, keep him in a straight line, and we're always going to outspeed him. Crippling his legs helps out quite a bit, and he's dead. Alright, it's just one leader of the think tank and aspiring leader of New Vegas versus Legatlantius. As we make our way over to him, we're going to buff up all that good stuff. I actually did forget to buy Slasher from Jack, but I don't know if we're going to need it. And now the fight starts out pretty funny here. Thanks to the nail gun being quiet, it takes Legatlantius a minute to figure out where that's coming from. And believe it or not, despite the fact this weapon is terrible against a heavily armored unit like him, we do manage to take out a couple bars of his health before he spots us. Lanius calling Myron degenerate actually makes sense. So now we find ourselves in a dangerous game of cat and mouse, and, well, you know what? Because we're allowed to use other weapons, let's go ahead and bust out our trusty gift from the think tank, that awesome, fully modded out K9 Cyberdog minigun. And, well, combining that with Turbo, and we can see the true colors of Legatlantius. I mean, you're seeing it on screen right here. And, I mean, we're even giving him a head start by taking out the Praetorians, doing battle with the veteran legionaries. I mean, where are you going? Get back here, you sissy. Yeah, so much for that honorable combat there, Legate. Well, we can add that to our list of Legatlantius kills, taken out by a weapon with the mascot of a Target gift card dog on it. And, well, as for the 3 legionaries in front of us, yeah, this weapon, combined with our massive gun skill, we just tear through them like a knife through butter. However, we're not out of the woods just yet. There is one more veteran legionary for us to take out, and it doesn't take too long to find him. I was thinking maybe he was on that watchtower out west, but turns out he's actually on ground level, which is pretty great for us, and he's in our line of sight. I love the scope on this thing, by the way, just so awesome. And, well, before we go have our confrontation with Oliver, which we can't talk our way out of because we don't have the speech check nearly enough to clear it, well, after a bit of celebrating and removing Legatlantius's mask, hey, I thought this guy was supposed to be scarred, man. Like, look at that. He's got a nice, clean face. Maybe Kaisar thinks mutton chops are scars? I don't know. It's not like we can ask him. And as we have our confrontation with Oliver, I actually learned something new in this run here through one of the options we can explore. Is that when you pick the answer, you think this is all the forces we have, we can tell them about the boomers of Nellis and how they'll totally go west if we want them to, because they would. I don't know why Oliver thinks otherwise. It actually lowers the speech check from 100 to 85. That's really awesome. I never knew that. I just love that I can learn new stuff in every run I play. Very cool. Anyway, as we take out Oliver and pump him full of nails, we have no interest in fighting those veteran rangers because they will take us out real fast, so we're gonna let Yes Man and our army have a little bit of fun too. And yeah, that's pretty much game, baby. I hope you guys had fun with that run, and I really hope that you guys had fun with this as our 500 subscriber milestone. I had a blast with this. Going through Old World Blues again for the first time in a while was just so much fun. I wanted this to be out a little bit sooner, but with all the content I was doing in the Big Empty and everything with the think tank, yeah, you can probably see why this took me a little bit longer than I had intended. I'm sorry about that. If there's anything that this playthrough taught us, it's that Myron's ending in Fallout 2 was the best for all parties concerned. Thank you guys so much for watching. Our next runs are on screen right now. Looking forward to seeing you there. Have a good one, guys. Take care.